Hello everyone, welcome to Hermes Exim Services. I have learned by experience, often the hard way, some invaluable points in international trade. So, if you are willing to get the know-how of international trade, join me, raise questions, and share ideas. I'll be glad to see your comments and your opinions about what issues to video. In this channel, I plan to talk about a wide range of issues, such as sourcing, commercial correspondence, goods confirmation, documentation, finance, inspection, insurance, logistics, customs clearance, and delivery of the goods to the final destination. Once I started my job in international trade, one of the issues I found quite new and a bit difficult to understand was the Incoterms. On all shipping documents, I clearly saw the three-letter terms such as EXW, FCA, CPT, CIP, FOB, and so on and so forth. I just had to choose one of these three-letter terms on import and export shipping documents. I couldn't easily decide which one was the best option for me. In some online forums, I had to write one of the same three-letter terms under the title of Incoterms. That seemed a lot more difficult for me to do. Written on all shipping documents, the three-letter terms seemed to be of importance, but I had no idea what each of them meant. I found it very easy as far as we were involved in trade transactions with our trustees all over the world. Difficulty arose when we decided to work with new people in new countries, those whom we did not know and we were trading with for the first time. Before talking about Incoterms, let me introduce you to the world's largest international trade organization. That is the International Chamber of Commerce, or ICC. The International Chamber of Commerce was founded in 1919. The organization's international secretariat was established in Paris. The ICC's International Court of Arbitration was created in 1923, and now this organization is introduced in 127 countries worldwide and has national committee in 93 countries. What does the International Chamber of Commerce do exactly? Actually, the organization is partnering with IMF and the World Bank. If you do not know what IMF is and what it does exactly, watch my later videos. I will talk about World Bank, IMF, and the other organizations associated with the United Nations in those videos. It was created to promote global trade and investment. It keeps the United Nations and the World Trade Organization in touch with views of international business. This organization facilitates the development of international trade, investment, and global economic integration as a force for sustainable growth, job creation, and prosperity. It provides practical rules and standards for international business community. Now you know the International Chamber of Commerce, ICC, so we can answer the question. What are the Incoterms? International commercial terms, or Incoterms, are a set of rules published by the International Chamber of Commerce. These rules relate to international commercial law. They govern delivery, risks, obligations, and costs in critical points of international transactions. Incoterms state the tasks and responsibilities that the seller and the buyer must take on in trade transaction. They specify who bears the cost for and manages the shipment, insurance, documentation, customs clearance, and other logistical activities. They also allow trading partners to determine when the risk in transporting the goods passes from the seller to the buyer. Now guess what Incoterms do not specify. Right. The Incoterms do not specify the amount of the contract. The terms of financing is not specified by the Incoterms either. The Incoterms have nothing to do with the transfer of the ownership of the goods. There should not be any confusion between transfer of risk and ownership transfer. An Incoterm specifies the transfer of risk, but it does not specify the transfer of ownership. The ownership of goods is transferred by exchanging certain documents between the seller and the buyer. What else? The Incoterms do not specify the recognition of revenue. This includes revenue, costs, profit and loss, the average rate of return, and break-even. These are the basic financial terms you can find in most companies' documents, such as business plans and financial reports. They do not specify the consequences of a breach of contract and exemptions of liability either, because these are defined by the terms of sale contract and governed by the law. The first step to keep up with Incoterms rules changes is to learn the basics of what they are, how they work, and why they matter. Incoterms are not laws, but contractual terms that allocate the costs and risks of shipping goods between buyers and sellers. Now, let's take a look at the history of the Incoterms. In 1923, ICC conducts first study of 6 most commonly used trade terms in 13 countries, highlighting disparities of their interpretations. In 1928, second Incoterms rules study expands scope to improve clarity of trade terms in over 30 countries. In 1936, ICC publishes first edition of the Incoterms rules, featuring 6 trade terms relating to carriage by sea. In 1953, 3 new non-maritime trade terms addressed the rise of transport of goods by rail in the wake of World War II. FOR, free on rail, FOT, free on truck, and DCP, delivered cost paid. In 1967, ICC launches third edition of the Incoterms rules, including 2 new terms, delivered at frontier, DAF, and delivered in country of destination, DDP. In 1976, fourth edition of the Incoterms rules announces new terms to end confusion relating to the interpretation of FOB, free on board, for air transport. Later in 1980, FRC, free carrier term, and new documentation processes introduced to address rise of containerization. In 1990, ICC unveils Incoterms 1990, a complete version of the 1953 version reflecting contemporary practices in international trade and use of intermodal transport. FRC becomes FCA. Changes also contain provisions for the use of electronic messages. In 2000, publication of Incoterms 2000 sees major changes to the delivery section, which made the term FCA, free carrier, far clearer and easy to use. In 2010, ICC releases Incoterms 2010, reducing the number of terms from 13 to 11 by inclusion of two new rules for use irrespective of the agreed mode of transport. Other modifications to reflect the contemporary trade landscape comprises measures to enhance cooperation among parties and adaptations regarding commodities, sales, and domestic transactions. The Incoterms have been updated roughly every 10 years to keep up with the updates in international commerce and logistic world. Not many changes were made in Incoterms 2020, just DAT became DPU. There are 11 terms in Incoterms 2020, which are grouped like this. Group E has just one member, EXW. In Group E, EXW, the responsibility of the goods is transferred from the seller to the buyer at the seller's premise. In fact, the seller provides the goods at his place of business in the origin. Group F, FCA, FAS, and FOB. In Group F, while obtaining export licenses, the seller delivers the goods to the transport operator at a specific location. Group C, CFR, CIF, CPT, and CIP. In Group C, the seller pays the carriage but does not take transit risk. The seller obtains export licenses and pays for the transportation or transport and insurance to the destination. But the guarantee and responsibility for the defect and damage is transferred from the seller to the customer at the time of delivery to transport operator. And Group D, DAP, DPU, and DDP. In this group, the seller must deliver the goods to the named point and have risk to the delivery point. Based on the mode of transport, the 11 Incoterms can be grouped in two different groups. EXW, FCA, CPT, CIP, DAP, DPU, and DDP are used for any mode of transport, while FAS, FOB, CFR, and CIF are used for ocean, sea, and inland waterway transport. These are known as maritime Incoterms, relating to conventional sea freight shipments. And now, here is my question. What is the use of Incoterms? Why should we choose one of those three-letter terms and put it on every shipping document? The seller and the buyer need a common language. There must be a standard to refer to whenever they are not of the same mind regarding the issues raised in the process of trade transactions. We do so to minimize misunderstandings, reduce the risk of disputes between buyers and sellers, standardize business terms, and provide a level of certainty to international trade transactions. By using these terms, both parties can be sure that their rights and responsibilities are clearly defined, reducing the risk of confusion or disputes arising later in the transaction. Working as both buyer and seller, I can look at trade transactions from different angles. Whatever your role in this process, I hope my experience can be helpful to you. Did you like this video? So, let me know. And also consider joining this community by subscribing. Thank you for your attention and support.